series. I'm really excited to be bringing you some fabulous leaders. We're going to have candid conversations. We're going to learn from their experience and hopefully get some really valuable morsels out of this series. So the reason why I've put this together is I have been in the industry for 20 years. I've been working with fabulous people. I've met some extraordinary leaders. I've helped build some extraordinary teams, and I really wanted to bring some of the knowledge and experience that I have come across to as many people as possible. So I've chosen LinkedIn Live to do this. I hope this forum works for everybody, and I will be here at 11:30 every Thursday until I run out of leaders to talk to, and I hope it's helpful for you. I've just put together this very short video to launch us each week so that people can see us go live, they can jump on board, and they know we're here. So bear with me, we will be going live at 11:30 as promised. So why is this important? This is important because it's to be good at what you do. It's really important to model good people. So if you want to be the best, model the best. And I have worked with so many wonderful leaders and helped them build teams. I've seen some really fabulous leadership styles. I've seen people who've developed over time as leaders, and the fastest way to do that is to, yes, there's theory, but let's move away from theory a little bit and let's look at what really happens in these roles for these people, and let's learn from the mistakes that some of the leaders have made. So I suppose I'm bringing mentors to the table through the experience that I have and the people who I have met over the years. So hopefully it's inspiring to you. Hopefully it's a place where you will gain some valuable information. Even if you pick up one thing from the conversation we're having each week, then that will be enough for me to feel as if I've brought you value. So I really do hope that you receive value from this. What I would love from you is if you can let us know you're here. Obviously we're live on LinkedIn. We would love interaction from you to know that you're here, you're listening. Let us know if there's something that comes up for you that resonates with you, something that you want to ask. The aim will be 20 minutes of conversation and then 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, depending on how we end up. So hopefully that works for you all. As I say, please interact with us, engage. And if you would like a transcript of this session, I'm going to share transcripts with people who come to me and ask for them, and I will also put together a document which will be all of the key takeouts, the key learnings that we've received from each session. So I'll also be able to share that with you if you pop a comment in at the end of the conversation. So really excited to be here once again. Let's get on with it. I will see you on the other side.
Good morning. Good morning, Pat. Welcome from, where did you say you are again?
I'm in Cobar.
Welcome from Cobar. And everyone can see the motorcycle helmet behind you. So Pat's on a big bike ride this week, which is I'd love to be doing that. Although I'm a bit scared of riding bikes, so probably wouldn't happen. I could be a passenger. I'm just going to do a quick intro for Pat, just to tell you a little bit about him and where he's from, and then we will jump into it. So thank you to those who are on already. I'm not getting comments yet, but I do see that there are 12 or 13 people already on, so hi. So Pat is a technology veteran. I love that we call you a veteran. He's been in the industry for more than 20 years, and he's worked in a broad range of technologies, right through unified computing, virtualization, software, storage, security, networking. And he's worked for big companies like Cisco, Hitachi, HP, Dell, Memtel when they were around, and also worked in a plethora of smaller startup businesses as well. So brings a bit of a view from both sides, I suppose. And so for the last 10 years, Pat's been working as regional leader, as I say, for startup companies. He's currently running Aruba in the ANZ region. I think it's ANZ, is it, or beyond?
Yep. No, ANZ.
Yeah, exciting. And so Aruba being a bit of a startup compared to the rest of HPE, and is certainly treated and behaves that way. And he says at Aruba, the mantra is customer first, customer last. It's about relationships over transactions. And I think to an extent, that's how Pat leads as well. So just I thought that was worth touching on. And it's Aruba is really about changing the rules of networking to create smart digital experiences enabled by next generation network. One that's software defined, secure, and designed for mobile and IoT, which obviously is where the world is moving to now. So, and when he's not knee deep in technology, Pat enjoys throwing around. Enjoys getting thrown around in the judo dojo, or playing ice hockey for the Norwest Emperors. So, or riding his bike across, challenging parts of Australia. So there you go. So welcome again, Pat. Thank you. It's great to have you here. And now, off the back of that huge intro, I'd love you to share with us to start off with kind of how you landed in leadership. And, I always want to know if it found you or you found it. It's just an interesting thing to know.
Well, thank you for the very long intro. I feel like about a quarter of that is true, so that's good. I feel like all the people I've known in the industry have got these kind of weird, tangled journeys to how they got where they got to. And I think it's quite a instructive thing to kind of poke through people's past and see the jobs that probably the ones that messed with them the most. I think that teaches you more about like how you're going to manage people. It's probably the bad leaders in a lot of ways that shape your experience more than the good ones. I was very lucky. I got a quick break in IT. I was working I had dropped out of a forestry degree because I had gone to uni and said, there's no money in this computers game. I'm going to go do forestry. Computers, I don't see a future in that. But it didn't work out, and I was kind of running this little store in Canberra and just kind of wondering what I was going to do with my life. And I ended up going to work for a company called Osborne Computers, which was they were like a IPC type competitor, Australian, assembled IBM PC clones. And they offered me this job looking after federal government customers. And so I quit my job running this little store. I was very excited to make this journey into IT. And a week before I was due to start, they came to see me in the store, which was just super weird, and said, "Oh, we've just been kicked off the federal government supply contract. So I'm sorry, it sucks to be you, but there's no job." And I was feeling a bit lost and lonely and not sure what to do. And then 48 hours later, they came back in and said, "Oh, we're back on the contract. You still want the job?" And having no other prospects, I went and joined these guys. And actually, I think that's probably a lot about me too. I've got a kind of a goldfish memory when it comes to people kicking me in the teeth. It never really bugged me. Like people ask me a lot, were you upset? Were you angry? And I'm like, I don't know. I never really thought about it. I'm not sure that shows a lot of emotional intelligence, but it means I tend not to hold a grudge when someone's been mean to me.
Yeah.
So I worked for them for a while. I was probably in their top 10 most clueless sales reps. I think I really dug the tech, but I just had no idea what I was doing when it came to running a sales process, or just kind of understanding how to put a price together or negotiate with somebody. And I worked alongside some really smart people who did their best to try and teach me, and I don't think much of it rubbed off. We eventually did get kicked off the federal government contract, and the company offered to move me to Sydney, which I was 20 something, early 20. I thought it was very exciting. Felt very grown up. Movers came and moved all my stupid, teenage boy type house into somewhere exciting in Sydney. And I was equally as clueless as a rep, I think, for Osborne in Sydney. But it was a much bigger organization. So for the first time, I kind of started to interact with some very smart salespeople, with some very well-educated people who had a great process. And I kind of followed a bunch of them around like a kind of lost puppy, trying to learn what I could. I worked with a guy called Jeff Kling, who was kind of a mentor of mine and a flatmate in Sydney for a long time. And he, you know, while I was reading comic books at night, he'd be reading the Financial Review, and he was a very smart cat. And anytime I was asked to do anything business-wise, I would always ask Jeff what he would do. And I think he kind of like, you know, suffered me very well and helped me kind of wrap my head around it. I don't think I ever quite got anywhere near Jeff's skill or status. He had studied finance and he was very clever and kind of, you know, had stocks, just something I didn't know much about at the time either. But started to learn, you know, a thing or two about sort of how to put a business plan together and how to run a sale. The company went into voluntary administration, which I didn't know anything about. Actually, I think it's a really valuable thing for people to go through, a company going bankrupt. You learn a heap about the finances of what happens. You learn about like the laws around listed companies and what they're allowed to do, and, you know, who gets paid first and where you sit in the hierarchy of things. If you've got a lot of leave as an employee, what does that mean? Are you going to get paid? Are you not going to get paid? The process was depressing, but it was fascinating. In the end, I think Gateway 2000, like a big retail, like a Dell competitor, ended up taking over. But for me, it was time to move on. I was lucky in that I kind of had this, because I'd moved from Canberra to Sydney, I ended up with like a reasonably senior sales title, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And I had an opportunity to kind of go do another senior gig. And I kind of looked in the mirror one day and went, you can't do this. You're actually not very good. You need to do something else. And I was really, really lucky again. This company called Memorex Telex had an HR director who was a very smart guy, studied, you know, a lot, probably the nicest and most sort of well-meaning and considered HR guy I've ever met in my working career, a guy called David Myers. I think he worked for ASK for a while. Now he kind of runs his own consulting practice, but super smart guy. He built this what he called the sales associate training program, where he brought in people and basically didn't put too much pressure on them. And they kind of got tagged with a, you know, senior sales guy, and they did lots of training and kind of learned the process in an environment which, you know, wasn't high pressure for them. And that was perfect for me. I got lots of tech training. I learned all about networking. Memorex were a big Cisco reseller, so I learned all about, you know, all the Cisco protocols and the OSI model and all that kind of stuff. But I also followed around this sales guy called Martin Darling. Martin's a bit of a legend in the industry as well. But he just had this, you know, customer set that was like a cult of personality that followed Martin around. And he had, the way he sold is he was everyone's best friend. And so when they had money, he was this great guy, and they all connected with him. When they ran out, it was like a trail of ex-girlfriends. There was always sad customers who'd call me up, who was his kind of admin sales scumbag, and they'd be like, "Can we please see Martin again? We miss him so much." And I'm like, "Well, I think you got to buy something to get back in." But he was a really good like mentor and sort of sales leader to learn from, and I really enjoyed that. And for me, I learned a stack about the process just by kind of following around someone and kind of mimicking what they did and trying on, you know, almost like a kid trying on, you know, his parents' clothes, or, you know, your dad's, you know, suit and tie or something, just kind of trying on a persona and seeing if it worked for me. What I learned really quickly is that persona didn't work for me. He was a like 100% relationship guy, and I was a tech nerd who occasionally like managed a decent relationship. Luckily for me, the sales manager there was a guy called Bill Taylor Mountford. Again, like an incredible relationship sales guy, probably the best I've ever seen in my working life. And he felt like he had enough of that. And I think he tapped me and said, "Well, I wouldn't mind a few more tech nerds. Come with me and we'll go to Dell." And so we all went to Dell together. And I actually learned more about management from Bill than almost anybody. He's like really clever guy, really knew how to get inside people's heads, and really just a cultural leader more than anything else. Like he created a team where they were really emotionally connected to him. And he just had all these little sort of tricks and tools that he would use But it always felt like he had your back and he kind of looked after you. And it was very different to the management style of the time. I think we're really lucky in this day and age. We're very touchy-feely. There's no like offices with closed doors. No one screams and swears at you. But when I was coming up, there's a lot of screaming and swearing. It was part of the kind of rite of passage. And all the senior leaders I knew were screamers and swearers. Like they really like to tear strips off salespeople who weren't performing well. And Bill was kind of this different sort of character, right? He was, he kept people very close. He was a great storyteller, and he would always light up our Monday morning sales meetings with some, crazy, an awkward anecdote that had happened to him on the weekend. And it was only years later that I discovered it wasn't an accidental thing. It wasn't Bill just being a bit of a character. He deliberately tried to create a mood at the start of each week. And it takes a lot of effort to do that. For him, it seemed really natural. But it's years later that you kind of learn that actually as a sales leader, you've got a job to set this emotional tone. And that can be hard if you're having some stress yourself. If you come in and you had a big Barney at home on the weekend, or you're under financial pressure, or you're missing your target, it can be easy to kind of be really negative and set that tone. And that's catchy. And so Bill was an amazing guy at setting a positive tone. One of the things, I didn't know much about management at this point. I'm still a rep, but one of the things he said to me is, if ever you manage people, before you go nuts at anyone, make sure you ask them if they're okay. And I feel like he'd learned this lesson like the tough way. But so, if I come to see you, Rebecca, and say, oh my God, you're a terrible performer. you're gonna have to get out of this company. And you say, oh, I forgot to tell you, my dad died this morning. So he's like, always check in and see what's going on in their life before you give anyone super negative feedback, because there's a good chance that it might not be about what you see. It's something completely different. And I thought that was like a huge piece of advice. I've stuck with it as long as I could.
Totally. That's hugely valuable advice. Just incredible. And from what you're saying, sorry to interrupt your flow, but
No.
there's things that you've chosen to pick up on over the years. And a lot of, I think this is the huge difference. And in every conversation I've had so far, the biggest thing that struck me has been awareness. And it's being aware of, yourself and your impact on others, and you're picking up on, what works and what doesn't work, versus just sort of going straight for the jugular and just copying everything. And again, that takes awareness as well. Yeah. So, but that's a huge piece of advice that he gave you there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of knowing what you don't know, or being able to take negative feedback. I have a principle when I'm presenting, is that I like people to tell me the worst things about my presentation, because they're the things I need to work on. If you think I was good, that's great, but I can't do anything with that. It's nice to know and it's pleasing, but what I want to know is if I stutter or stammer, or if I'm twitching my leg, or if I said or mispronounced something, or if I just got the whole thing wrong. I'd rather know than repeat that. If you just say, it was all fine, that was great, do that again, that's terrible, right? So I think being able to take negative feedback, it's hard to take. And it can be sometimes, my wife hates giving it to me, because she says, I know you say you like it, but you always snap at me when I tell you the truth. I'm like, I might, but I listen. I promise I listen. I was when I went to Dell, I was really lucky. I got some good leadership as well. Like I feel like I've kind of had this, born under a lucky star, and that had a few people who've really kind of just helped lift me up. There's this guy called Ralph Status. I don't know if he doesn't seem to be doing much in the industry anymore, but he was a big deal at digital. And when Compact and digital came together, he kind of went off to do something else, and they hired him over at Dell. And he was known as being this maverick kind of guy who could change things up and break all the rules. And I feel sorry for him, because I think Dell kind of broke him. Dell was full of so many crazy mavericks that ended up becoming the parent, kind of keep everyone else under control. But I don't know why, when he came, we kind of met and talked, and he sort of said, I'm gonna be your mentor. And literally, those words, I'm gonna give you some mentorship, I'm gonna help you out. And he kind of pulled me out of sales and gave me a run at marketing. And then, I got to try lots of different marketing things. And then he said, all right, let's do some sales management now. And I got to go run a little team. And he was just very generous with his time, and gave me a lot of shots that, I really probably didn't deserve. But I remember him really well for that, and it really helped me out. And so my first management gig was managing a little team in Dell, and I was a horrible manager. I was a terrible person. I talked a lot of crap about my people. I gave them lots of negative feedback. It was awful. I remember a guy called Stuart Kiernan, who works for Palo Alto now. He was a telesales rep on my team. And I was really rude to him at a customer event. And I think something like 10 years ago, I just had this moment where I was remembering all, I think I was playing back all the awful things I'd done to people over the years. And this one really stood out. And so I called him up and gave him this really long and heartfelt apology for something that he had no memory of. So which is kind of funny in itself. I think he thought I was going through a 12-step program and I was onto the, apologize to people. But for me, that's the thing being a parent taught me, a parent of little kids, is that apologies are really important. And even if you don't get to it right away, it's something, and it's a lot of it's about you, not necessarily them. You carry this thing with you, and it's something that's like a scar that I think you can heal with an apology. And I like to think that when I've been really horrible to someone, and there's plenty of times I have, that I try to reach out and kind of say sorry, and I feel like that puts out some good karma in the universe. And I've got plenty of them. Over the years, I've reached out to a lot of people to say I'm sorry. I had I ran a company called WatchGuard for a little while, and I was reading a lot on management books, and watching these people that I knew were very successful in the industry, and trying really hard to be better. And I kind of thought that there was this common theme with all the really incredibly successful IT leaders. They're all really angry. They had a lot of aggro, a lot of fire in their belly. They didn't put up with any crap, and they would tear strips off someone. And that sort of baptism of fire would bring out the best in people, was the idea. And it's not naturally who I was, but I kind of thought, well, maybe I'm not going to make it to the next level unless I try this out.
Right.
And maybe I've got to be that person. I wasn't sure whether I could. And so I had a guy who, whenever he forecast, he would always drop his number right in the last week of the quarter. And it was just torturous, because it's the worst time. If you're trying to run a region, the worst time to drop is right before the quarter's about to end. You've got no ability to cover for it. And he dropped his number, before the end. And I thought, all right, here's the chance. I'm going to try this out. And I went to town, like Mussolini from the balcony. I went nuts, screaming and swearing and threatening. And I kind of felt awful at the end of it. And he felt awful. I felt awful. And, the results didn't change. Yeah. We never really spoke about it. And until I ran into him, I think like 5 or 6 years ago at a trade show. And I just gave him a big hug and said, I'm really, really, really sorry. I think I probably made your life hell for a couple of weeks. And you were just like, what happened to this guy who was so nice to me? And then one day he just unloaded, and I've carried it with me forever. And I apologize. And he was like, wow, I did not see that coming. But it's a funny thing.
There's a few things that have kind of jumped to mind. And there's also, just firstly, before I get into that, I'm going to jump into the chat for a second and welcome John, all the way from Columbus, Georgia, USA. Busy day. That's a good time. Congratulations to the USA at the moment. John Milano, I don't know if that's someone you know, or just someone who's joined us from the US. Anyway, I just want to welcome people from far and wide. So what had come up for me when you were talking then, one of the things was, okay, so you learned what not to do. And you did learn from the gentleman, Status, his surname was, I can't remember what you said his first name was, but you learned from him about, drawing. He's approached you not because he just thought it would be a good thing to do. He's obviously seen something in you and then approached you and then lifted you up. So, you talk about being under a lucky star. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that people identify things in people. And I just wonder, as a leader yourself now, and a much better leader than you obviously were back then when you were trying to yell at people, do you identify good people, and how do you bring them up, and what do you do with that now?
I do try. It's interesting. I've sat on a lot of leadership teams and listened to other leaders, and there's a common theme that crops up a lot. And I think it came from someone reading Steve Jobs's bio. Like Jobs had this thing where you're either a rock star or a moron, basically. There's nothing in between. And I really, really didn't like that. Especially as someone who's been in the firing line of one of Jobs's rants before. We crossed paths, not like face to face, but I did a project that while I was at HP in my first time around, that he came across his desk and he decided he didn't like and fired missiles via Carly Fiorina back into our org. So I always thought I didn't like that categorization. And you often hear from leaders who say, I only want A players. I only want A players. I don't even know what that means. What is an A player versus a B or a C, right? I want type A people. I want the best people, and that's it. And I have this thing that says, well, if all you get is the best of the best, and everybody wants to hire the best of the best, we all want great people, right? But if I only want the best and I just want to get rid of everyone who's not the best, what's my job? I mean, I don't need to, if my team are all awesome, I can. What do I get to sleep in? I think the job of a manager is, you've got to find and recruit the best people you can, but you've also got a team of people who need to be developed. And so if you can't recruit the best, and you don't always have like unlimited money, the best people know they're incredibly valuable, right? So you just don't wake up suddenly and double your salary cap because you need to hire the best of the best. The second best thing to doing that, or I think an even better thing, maybe not the second best, is to build them up from inside. Like, you've got to find those people and turn them into the best of the best, bring out the best they've got. And I think I was really lucky in that someone decided they wanted to make me a better me. And I was a pretty ordinary guy right then. I dressed really bad. I used to wear these horrible kind of off-color suits with white sports socks and Doc Martens. And Ralph actually took the time to say, dude, I want to make you, I want to give you a good career path. You've got to buy some nicer clothes. The comment stung me so bad at the time, because I just felt like someone was crapping on my look. But it was so right. Like I just looked like, some school kid who'd got his first job, and he helped. Right? And that sort of feedback, unbelievable, right? I would never tell anyone how to dress. I think that's crossing a line. But I have tried over the years to pick people I think would be really good at stuff and do my best to give them a helping hand. It's hard balanced. It's hard to find. It's hard to do well. And sometimes it backfires. Sometimes you put all your effort into someone who really thinks you're just shoving them somewhere they don't want to go. Sometimes they're just not capable of what you think they are. But once in a while, you find someone who's just, absolutely shines, and it's a real thrill to be able to do that. I've been very lucky again to find some people who we've been able to promote rapidly through, different organizations. And it's really exciting to see that, to see someone particularly. I love seeing someone go from sales to management and do it well, because so often we promote great salespeople who are terrible people managers. So I think it's incredibly rewarding, kind of scary, because you're basically building the person who's going to take your job sometime soon. But it's nice. My favorite thing is when I got someone who is a really good cultural fit, and we can bring them up, and then you've got two kind of cultural people, and then they bring the next one up, then you've got three, and then suddenly you've got this thing that kind of has a life of its own. And you get to build an org that it has this bright light that people can see from a long way away. Sales is great. And selling lots of stuff is really good. It attracts lots of people. But a positive culture is just phenomenal. Like, people see that, and it lasts a long time. And you're going to have a down year. The market goes up and down. Every sales org is going to have a tough year. And so that if numbers is the only thing you measure yourself by, there are times when you're going to look terrible. But if it's culture, and you can get it right, you can survive all of that.
Now, sorry to just sort of jump, but it's 11:56 already. Can you believe it? I know.
Sorry, I'm a long talker.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. One I noticed earlier from Carl. He said, when are Aruba going to get some meeting magic? That smiley face.
Of course, Carl would ask that question.
So
sometime soon.
There you go. All right. And Yanis says, so Pat, did you get up with the fleas? Do you suggest initiating in your mentoring now? I'm not sure what the fleas means. Do you know what he means?
I'm not sure on that one either.
Is it a typo? I'll wait for your response to that, Yanis. Rocco, refreshing, open approach, leadership and life experience in a real world. Good presentation, Pat. Thanks, Rocco. Good to see you. And Manpal, how did you convert your vast history into strength and position it into a strength and position it? Usually, if you have jumps in your career, it can be seen as not sure when progressing. So people are sometimes concerned when you've got lots of jobs. It sounds like you've got lots of jobs.
I do, actually. Yeah, I've had lots of, and people often ask me that when I go somewhere, they're like, "Oh, you've only stayed here 18 months or there 12 months. What's the deal with that?" Two things. One, for me, I went to a lot of places that got sold or bought, and so I picked the tech first, and I think I said before, I came up with people who knew their finances very well, and I didn't. It's something I've had to learn, but I tend to go with technology that excites me. And then I find out later that, in fact, the company was in distress because they needed to do another round of capital raising and someone bought them. So I've got a lot of stops and starts because companies have been bought and sold. But one thing for me that's made it easy is I haven't every time, but I've always tried my best to pick tech that I really, really dig. And when you're really into it, it's so easy to get other people excited about it. But if you don't believe, it's really hard. If you're selling something that you're kind of not really a believer in, like super hard, really hard. And like when I was coming up, there were these great, I think I mentioned it, like I worked for, and besides really great relationship people, they didn't really care what they sold. They were just people who people wanted to be around. And you can sell like that. You can sell really well, but that was never my bag, never my style. I couldn't do it. I just wasn't that kind of person. Think about the kind of sales training in the 90s, the Zig Ziglar, the Tony Robbins type guys, the art of the close. That was never me. I was take a look at this widget. Isn't it the coolest thing you've ever seen? Don't you need one? Yeah. And luckily for me, I think the industry's kind of pivoted a little bit towards that. There's a lot of kind of geeky technologists who've made it big. And, I haven't made it big, but being the tech geek and really being into what the technology I get behind has helped me a lot. And so when people ask me where I've been and what I've done, I like to think they see me get excited about the tech. I'm still excited. I can still pitch every tech I've ever sold. And I've tried never to go to a competitor who I bagged out because why would I do that? I remember when I sold storage for HP, when I first joined HP like 20 years ago, I was a storage guy. And I believed hard in our product. And EMC came and knocked on my door once and said, "Oh, do you want to come work for us? You're kind of disrupting us a bit." And I'm like, "Oh my God, no." That'd be like, going completely to the enemy camp. I just couldn't do it. I've been able to be a great talker. You don't have to be a great relationship person, but if you believe hard, it's addictive.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I mean, I suppose in terms of the question of how do you turn it into a strength? I think there you go. There is your strength. You get the someone's passion stands for a lot, and I think it's changing now. People aren't expecting as much consistency in backgrounds, and I think you've got to be able to tell the story and tell it well. When you're transitioning to get that across. Now, another
the question always comes up, right? Did you get pushed or did you leave? And if you can tell an exciting story about why you went, that's all you need.
Yeah. And I think the thing that turns people off is, well, I was tapped on the shoulder because, well, then when are you going to be tapped on the shoulder here is the question that comes up, right? So that's not the answer. But yeah, like you say, a compelling story. We have hit 12 o'clock already. And Graham says, loved the story. Thank you for sharing, Graham Lowbridge. And I've got, Amit's kind of asked the question that I always finish with, or a similar question to what I always finish with. Amit has said, thank you for the candid conversation. Seems like you practice gratitude a lot. Can you give one key piece of advice for leaders in their professional journey? So if you could only say one thing, what would that one thing be?
The most important thing you can do as a leader is build good culture.
Yeah.
I think I worked for an organization where they wrote it on their goal sheet, and it was called Culture as a Weapon. And I wrote it down. It's something I've kept with me. It's a massive differentiator. And you as the leader get to choose how that goes. It's huge effort, requires you to put aside. I think we talked about that right at the start. Sometimes you're having a bad day and you've got to put it aside to make sure that you project what's right. But great culture beats, I mean, that's a quote from someone else's book, but culture trumps, tech, culture trumps great salesmanship. Culture beats everything. It's, great culture. There's nothing like it.
And it makes it so much nicer to be there too. It's just, around who are like-minded, and you're all on the same mission, and you've all got a purpose.
When you want to give more, right? When you're excited to be there, you want to give more of your time. You do it freely, and you follow that person. If I order you to do something and I scream at you, you'll do it, but it'll be like barely there. But if we are on a mission together and we believe hard, we're going to do everything we can to get there.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you. And hi, Marcello from another USA. How are you? And I've got another message here. There's lots and lots actually of messages here saying thank you. Really great story, great presentation, very grounded, and they've enjoyed the candid nature of the conversation. So thank you, everyone. If you would like a transcript or notes from today's session, please feel free to reach out and I will get that to you once it's ready. And next week I have, sorry to just sort of cut us off, but we've gone over time. I've got Fiona Boyd on from Sydney, and Fiona is the CEO of a cloud organization and has some fabulous experience to share. So anybody who is available, please join me next week at 11:30. And once again, thank you, Pat. I would love to get you back on, to be honest, because I really want to drill into the culture conversation a little bit more. I would love to know, to drill into how to build that culture, and what are some of the things you do and you find work for you as well. So hopefully you don't mind joining us again sometime.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me and indulging me talking too long. I appreciate it.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again, everyone. You're all awesome. Thanks for joining us. Please share it with people if it's interesting to you. And I am just going to jump into our closing. Thanks, Janine. I'm just going to jump into our closing video, and I will see you all next time. Thanks again, Pat. Take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful you managed to take time out to spend with us. I hope you got some value from the conversation. And just a reminder, I will be here every Thursday at 11:30 talking to another fabulous leader and bringing you more great morsels and value and mentoring. So please do join me. And if there's anything you would like to talk about when it comes to attracting, developing, retaining high-performing teams, please reach out. I would love to have a conversation. If you would like a transcript of the session, please remember to leave me a message or get in touch, and I'll also produce a document which will have the key takeouts from today's session, so I can share that with you too. All right, thanks again. Have a fabulous day. I will see you next time.